The ABC and 7 are on the live streaming bandwagon, but who will watch?
And Apple has the iPad Pro and Microsoft's got the Surface Pro 4, but which one should you buy? Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm here with a man who has a great face for podcasting, Adam Turner. Adam, what's new in tech?
Twitter has finally won its long-running battle over the .au domain name, with the international IP watchdog forcing an Australian man to hand it over. He'd been hoping to sell twitter.com.au for at least $500,000, but the World Intellectual Property Organisation has ordered it to be handed over to Twitter for a song.
Apple Pay has finally launched in Australia, but only if you've got an American Express card issued by American Express itself. Bank-supplied Amex cards aren't supported at launch, but a number of local merchants, including some big names, are supporting the payment system.
Gaming giant Minecraft has signed up for the Hour of Code project, offering a free Minecraft-themed tutorial for kids designed to introduce them to the basics of programming. The announcement comes as Australian politicians debate whether to introduce programming to the school curriculum, with Queensland pushing ahead to launch a Prep to Year 10 coding program next year.
Pandora has announced that it's buying the assets of bankrupt music streaming service Rdio for $75 million. Rdio will shut up shop, with Pandora to use the assets for expansion activities in 2016. Given Pandora's radio-style status and Rdio's all-you-can-eat streaming model, it seems likely that Pandora will launch some kind of all-you-can-eat service in the near future. So Adam, Apple Pay's finally here. Are you excited?
I would be if I could use it. I was very excited.
You and me both, brother. You and me both.
Because my bank happens to hand out Amex cards and I have one. I never use it, but it's sitting there. I thought, awesome, I'll be able to use it on day one. No. This whole idea of Apple Pay was this great, ubiquitous, use it anywhere kind of thing. And to start off with such a limited partner, they might be big in the US, but Amex isn't nearly as big here. It's kind of frustrating they've kind of launched with a whimper rather than a bang.
Look, I think nobody's talking on the record about this, but it's fairly clear and obvious. The big reason that they haven't launched yet in a big way is because they can't agree on the fees they want to charge each other for all of this stuff. It's actually, oddly enough, it's exactly the same reason why a lot of stores you go into where you see the little sign that says, sorry, we don't accept American Express. It's because they don't want to pay their fees for using that particular card service. So in some ways, it's not a huge surprise that the most expensive card service has said, yeah, look, we'll shuffle some money Apple's way, but the Australian banks haven't. I mean, at this stage, you know, tap and go, PayWave, PayPass style services, they're damn near ubiquitous in Australia. You see far more places that say, sorry, we don't do tap and go than than anything else really, because it's just an expected thing. Apple Pay was always only ever going to be a kind of a little part of that. And the idea of paying with your phone is kind of neat. But if I'm pulling something out of my pocket, it can just as easily be my wallet for my money.
But you also get the impression that this is two giants clashing. Banks and Apple, two that are used to owning the customer and screwing the customer for everything they're worth. And Apple's managed to have that fight, and a few other industries can come out on top. The banks are a bit smarter, a bit wiser, and maybe have deeper pockets. They're not going to be as screwed over as easily as the music industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing here, though, is that because Australia had actually picked up a lot of this contactless payment fairly early on in the global scheme of things, Apple couldn't come in and say, well, this is a new revolutionary model. When they launched in the States, there really wasn't a whole lot of that kind of thing around, so it was new and different. And here, it's not so new, it's not so different, it's not a huge sales tactic, and I suppose that's also possibly the reason why American Express has jumped at it, because they're a card that bills themselves as a kind of premium service with all of these little add-on features that other cards don't have, but that you pay for in higher interest rates. Apple Pay is just another feature to them. Adam, the free-to-air broadcasters are starting to finally embrace internet broadcasting, but should we really be excited about that?
Well, I'm not excited, but then I feel bad about not being excited about it because we keep having to go at them for not doing anything new, and then when they do something new, I'm not that excited about it. So I'm in two minds.
You're a hard man to excite.
I'm a hard man to excite. I'm in two minds, perhaps, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, what the big announcements we've had is a little while ago, Seven announced that as of the 26th of November, that its 3 main channels, so 7, 7.2 and 7 Mate, will be live streamed on the internet. And the ABC's now jumped on the bandwagon as well. It was already live streaming ABC 24, the news channel Waste of Space for HD. And it's now going to live stream ABC 1 as well.
Some people like a news channel, Adam.
Yeah, but not in HD.
Especially a news channel that's not run by Rupert Murdoch.
Okay, that's a different argument. And then the ABC's also said, I think, that the second half of 2016, they're looking at making their primary channel HD. And Nine's doing that in the next month or so in time for, I think, the third test. So there's a lot of movement here. They're moving to HD, which we've been wanting, and they're also doing this live stream.
Been waiting for ages.
Yeah, but I can't think of any time in the last 10 years I've heard people criticising these networks saying, why don't you live stream your channels? It's more like, why don't you let me watch through, give me catch up through more devices? Why don't you improve the quality of catch up? Why don't you improve the quality of live broadcasting, HD? Who wants to watch I Dream of Jeannie at 3 o'clock in the afternoon streamed on 7.2?
You just don't have the right kind of hangovers, mate. But that aside, I get what you're saying. I actually think it's smart business for them because it's adaptive television. It attracts that kind of audience that says, well, I don't necessarily want a catch-up service where I've got to sit there and flick through a whole list of things and go, oh, do I feel like watching this? Do I feel like watching that? There is something to be said for that kind of flick the TV on veg experience, and that's what this is, within a methodology which in fact takes a lot of their transmission costs away for them because you're shifting to an internet model where it's up to people's broadband provision to work.
But they still have to pay for the servers on the back end, though. It's not costing them nothing to put this up.
For sure. It's not a nil cost exercise. Yeah. But I was going to say, I guess if I was in the business of antenna installation, I'd probably be pretty ticked off right now because I could imagine, for example, a lot of people renting who just wouldn't bother with having a TV antenna, because why would you if all the channels are going to be available over your broadband, and presuming your broadband's sufficient to actually support it, you really, I could see a spot in the near future where a TV antenna would be as anachronistic as a record player.
But that's a problem for the networks already. If you can already get by without an antenna, it's because you don't care about free-to-air television. It's because you're living on Netflix and BitTorrent.
You misunderstand,
I know what you're saying,
misunderstand me.
And also the picture quality is not going to be good enough. Yeah.
But no, I'm saying you'll be able to get by without an antenna if you're currently a free-to-air watcher. I'm not talking about the
terrible quality. I would be very, very surprised if their so-called live streams come anywhere near even decent standard broadcast quality.
Oh, look, yeah, no, I think you're probably pretty much on the money there, and the fact that they haven't come out and said, we will be offering HD streams is a bit of a damning indictment in itself. But I think I see the business model. It's about, because for them, especially for the commercial operators, the ABC is in a slightly different kind of marketplace, but it has to be seen to be innovative, and I think that's their push there. For the commercial broadcasters, surely it's a question of saying, well, what we actually do is sell audiences to advertisers, and by doing this, we're massively expanding the reach of our advertising and therefore making more money. Remember, we're not the people the commercial broadcasters serve. It's the people who pay for the ads to sell us dog food and hamburgers.
We are the product. If you're getting it for free, you are the product.
Absolutely. And I suppose the other thing is we've got to wait and see how well or poorly these services actually stand up, and that'll be the other acid test. So far, catch-up's been a real mixed game with, I think the ABC's really led the way with iView, but let's face it, iView is almost exactly a clone of the BBC iPlayer service, so they had a good model to work off there. SBS is pretty damn good with its on-demand service, but I've really been terribly under-impressed with the catch-up services offered by the main commercial channels to date. And whether or not they can deliver a quality product when they're actually live streaming it all the time, let's just say I'm not super convinced.
Yeah. And the other big problem, and this is the problem that Seven still has to sort out, is what happens when sport comes on. The AFL and Telstra will not let them broadcast the AFL matches. They have to strike a special deal with them. And we've seen Optus drag through the courts over this and other people. So it's going to be, hey, you can watch television on the internet.
Are you familiar with the phrase MASH rerun?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. You can watch television on the internet until something interesting comes on, and then it's I Dream of Jeannie time. You're not going to win a lot of people over that way. Right, so Alex, you've been playing with 2 big tablets recently. Which one did you find was easier to swallow?
Well, if I was talking about actually swallowing, probably the iPad Pro, because those little rounded corners, they're gonna go down your gullet a little easier.
Yeah, definitely. Good choice.
But To be specific, I've been testing out Apple's new iPad Pro, which they claim can replace a laptop for a lot of people. And save your laughter.
Yeah, someone's broken into Steve Jobs' private stash of Kool-Aid there, I think.
I think we might vaguely disagree on that one, but I'll get to that in a second. And Microsoft's latest entry in the Surface Pro family, the Surface Pro 4, as well as the Surface Book. And they're both they're attacking this hybrid, is it a tablet, is it a laptop, can you be productive with it market in slightly different ways. So you've got, for example, the Surface Pro 4, and obviously Microsoft's been making Surface Pros for a while now. We both said last year that the Surface Pro 3 was an excellent piece of hardware. Nice. And the really good news for the Surface Pro 4 is it's even better. Yeah. It's faster, the keyboard's better. It's still not bundled, which is a bugbear of mine. But that's better. The pen, if you like that kind of thing or have some artistic talent, which I don't, is better. It's responsive. It's a good way to use Windows 10. It all fits together rather nicely. Although, I should say, the Surface Pro 4 is excellent. My experiences with the Surface Book, much less so. But then I'm not entirely surprised because it's Microsoft's version 1 of a laptop.
Yes.
And it's really, really super glitchy. It can't always decide if you've detached the screen, and it seems to like blue screening an awful lot more than anything else.
The first Surface
it's
Pro
kind of
was
frustrating.
a little bit hit and miss as well. It took a couple of goes before
exactly.
it really came good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'd wait an iteration or two before jumping on the Surface Book bandwagon. But up against that, Apple's got the iPad Pro. And I mean, you laughed at the start, and we've discussed this before. Apple's idea that this will be the laptop of the future. And I'm still not super convinced that they're right. I think certainly, they are drinking their own Kool-Aid a bit. And obviously, they've got tablets to sell and they make more money out of their iOS lines than they do their macOS lines. So it's not surprising to see them going this way. But having said that, and having used an iPad Pro for a few productive tasks this week, it is actually feasible to use it as a productivity machine. And there are even some instances where it might be better for certain use cases.
That's a big call, but that's what it all comes down to, because people say, oh, you can do this and you can do that, but just because you can do it doesn't mean it's the best tool for the job. I think the analogy I used was, sometimes you need a motor scooter and sometimes you need a Jeep, and yes, technically I can carry everything I own balanced on my shoulders riding on a Vespa, but it's not necessarily the best tool for the job sometimes.
Yeah, look, and it does depend on your usage scenario, but where the iPad Pro shines is that because you can only multitask 2 apps at once, it's a nicely focused work environment. So if you don't want to get the kind of distractions that can come off a Windows desktop, you're kind of nicely served there. You've also got, and I think this will appeal to some people, the fact that iOS, whilst it's not bulletproof secure, because nothing is, software is written by people, before anyone jumps on me for the statement I'm about to make, you're not dealing with the kind of malware and security load that a full Windows system, like a Surface Pro 4, will. You're not running antivirus software on an iPad Pro. And that's a bit more controlled, a bit more managed. Does not mean it's bulletproof, but it's a bit more secure in that sense that you can be a bit more hands-off with it. And I can see that having some appeal. Whilst I said earlier, and it's true, that I have zero artistic talent, if I was an artist who drew with a pencil, the gulf between the Surface Pen, which feels like a plastic pen, it's quite neat technology, but you've got no doubt that you're holding a plastic pen, and the Apple Pencil, which is a really nicely engineered, albeit very expensive, stylus. Apple won't thank me for calling it a stylus, but that's what it is. The pencil really does feel like a pencil. It's kind of surprising. It sounds like it's just them doing the usual marketing name stuff, but it works really rather well as a pencil. It feels like you're holding like a little 2B or whatever in your hand. And for those who draw professionally, who might use a Wacom or something, I could see the appeal of the iPad Pro in that space, as long as the apps are there. And I guess that's the other thing. If the Surface Book is Microsoft's version 1 laptop, then so is the iPad Pro, and it depends on the apps that then get developed and the use cases they attract. Because you could say, and people did, the same thing about tablets back when the first iPad came out, and even about smartphone apps when the iPhone was first launching, and when Nokia was saying, oh, well, Apple will never be a problem to us because we own this market. And look how that turned out.
Yes. For me, it's all about the keyboard. I'm a wordsmith, you're a wordsmith, we spend our days typing. For which one of those two appeals to you as the one to sit down and write on all day? Sorry, not write as in a pencil write Write as in type stories on.
It's an interesting question, and I honestly, I can't give you a full-on answer that satisfies me one way or the other. The new Surface keyboard is really very good as a laptop-style keyboard, and it has a trackpad, which is obviously useful for interacting in a Windows sense. But what really surprised me, for the longest time, I've said I like Apple's physical hardware except for its peripherals. I can't stand their keyboards. They're terrible. Like, their laptop keyboards are okay.
I was going to say, Mac keyboard's not bad.
The little iMac Bluetooth keyboard, I hate that thing. I really do. I find it terribly hard to type on, terribly frustrating. So I was very surprised, considering it's essentially a fabric keyboard. And if you remember back to the Surface RT and its weird little fabric
and
touch
the first
keyboard
Surface
thing.
Pro had that as well. It was the touch type or whatever.
Hated that thing. Apple's iteration of it, for whatever reason, the spacing or the travel on the keys works a heck of a lot better. It's really quite comfortable. I sat down, I started working at it. So I think I could write at both fairly equally. The Apple keyboard is a little bit more expensive, and like the Surface, they don't bundle it with it. And in fact, weirdly, they seem to have underestimated their demand, because there's a massive shipping delay if you want the Smart keyboard, or in fact the Pencil for an iPad Pro right now. You can buy the Pro itself, but you're going to wait for the Pencil and the keyboard.
So they didn't even back their own product by bringing in enough stock, or is that kind of that exclusivity thing that they always do? Oh, we've run out. You'll have to queue up and wait and be special to have one.
For a 5-week delay, I doubt it. I think they underestimated the number of people who were going to go, I want this as a productivity tool, even though that's the way they pitched it.
That's what they've been saying the whole time,
The other funny aspect with the iPad Pro, though, remember when rumours of the Apple TV, and I'm talking here the flat panel, were the
television.
thing?
Yeah.
Every single day someone was saying, oh, they're coming out with the TV.
Which is crazy, because there's no money in televisions. Everybody knows that. Why the hell would Apple want to get into a cutthroat market that's putting people out of business when you can just sell a cheap set-top box? Sorry, that's my little rant. Move on.
Well, the point I was going to make is the iPad Pro, because it's a large tablet, is effectively Apple's take on a TV.
Oh, that's a big... All right.
Serious? No. Right. I'm serious about this.
I've got to process that. That's a lot to
I'm serious about this. Given that it's a reasonably high-res panel, and they've actually bothered to put really quite good speakers in it.
Does it come with a wall mount?
And the only reason you do that is because you want people to do entertainment-related stuff. You want people to watch video on it. And it works fairly well for that. No, there's no specific wall mount. I'm sure there'll be a third-party one. The weird thing with it, though, is that whilst it's kind of good as a TV if you're willing to, put it on a table or something, it's not quite as good, weirdly, as being a tablet as the, say, iPad Air or any number of Android tablets are, because of its size.
It's too damn big.
Yeah, it's huge. And and I've tried this, lying in bed, you prop up a tablet, which apparently we shouldn't do because it screws up our sleep, but you prop up a tablet and you think, right, I'm set. I'm gonna watch something. You do that with the iPad Pro, and it's like, there's this huge thing in front of me, and if I fall asleep, it's going to smack me in the nose so hard.
You'll end up doing a flat Stanley.
Yeah. It's weird in that aspect, but as an entertainment panel, it's surprisingly good, especially with the speakers they've included with it. But of course, this also brings us to that kind of killer question, because the iPad Pro is a little bit cheaper than the Surface Pro, especially in their respective low-end configurations. But there's not a heck of a lot in it. Which would we buy? Which ones would we recommend to people right now?
Well, having spent more time with the Surface Pro range than the iPad Pro range, I would lean towards the Surface Pro because it's got a real operating system on it, and I like what I've seen so far. And the idea of an overgrown iPad doesn't really appeal to me. I don't think I could do that much more with it than the iOS devices I already have.
I've now got this image of the iPad Pro jumping up and down going, I'm a real boy!
Yes, exactly.
But having said that, look, I think I would opt for the Surface Pro 4 at this time, because the iPad Pro is still that version 1 Pro. They're still sorting out the little quirks, and they've still got to build an app ecosystem that will support productivity the way most people do it. If you're happy with 2-app multitasking, and the Pro can do what you want, then yeah, you can be productive with it. I think Tim Cook chose his words carefully when he said, for a lot of people, it could replace. Yeah, it could, but as you said, it's not necessarily
But he then
the best
said,
tool
why
for the
would
job.
anyone ever want to buy a computer? He as good as said the computer was dead, the PC was dead, and he didn't just
Of
mean
course
Windows.
he did. He's got iPad Pros to sell.
Then I dare him to kill the Mac line off the next day because we don't need it anymore. He didn't. When he said PC, he didn't just mean Windows. He meant the desktop form factor.
You look at Apple's profit margins
Yeah.
relative for Mac OS and iOS, it's coming. It's just a question of when. Well, that just about wraps it up for this episode of Vertical Hold. And thanks for joining us for our first audio-only episode. The good news, if you're bemoaning the lack of video, is that whilst we've gone audio, we're also going to be going weekly. So you can get your dose of Vertical Hold each and every Friday. And if you've got any comments on this episode, any feedback or questions, hit us up in the comments section on YouTube, find us via Twitter, or via the Facebook Vertical Hold page.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button.